Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. So the other day I was doing this like Instagram questions thing where basically you guys would ask me to choose between two things, then I would pick the one that I liked more, and then I posted a poll and you guys would get to pick which one you liked more, and it was a lot of fun. I only did like 5 of them, but it was a good time. But one of the questions I got was asking me to choose between 2 of these characters from Bia, and I was having a hard time deciding between the 2 of them, and then I was really confused as to why I was having a hard time deciding between the 2 of them, because the one character was like my favorite character in the first season, and so I was like, well then why don't I like her anymore? And then I was like, oh, it's because they like ruined her character in the second season. And then I realized that she wasn't the only character that they did this to, and so here we are today. Now I know that people have been asking me to do a video for a while now on like the Disney Channel characters who had the best character development, and this is basically the opposite of that, but I do what I want. But before we jump right into it, let's go over the ad read first, because I have a feeling this video is going to get very rant-like, and I feel like we should go over who sponsored this video first before I start yelling. And so this video is sponsored by Skillshare. If you're a fan of the channel, then I'm sure you've heard me talk about Skillshare before. Skillshare is an online learning platform. You can go and learn something completely new or get better at a skill that you've already got. They offer classes on everything from photography to business to creative writing. Basically anything you can imagine, Skillshare has got a class on it. I've taken a few different classes on their platform, but I always find myself going back to either their Photoshop classes or their Premiere Pro classes, because in case you guys did not know already, I do make YouTube videos for a living, and so those 2 softwares are like my home base. So I recently took this class called Creating Organic Abstract Patterns in Photoshop. It was taught by this girl named Jaina, and it was really cool to see how to like learn this new technique, but also learn all of these new skills on Photoshop as well. A lot of people have asked me before for advice on how to start up their own YouTube channels, and one of the main skills that I recommend having is with Photoshop and with Premiere Pro, so Skillshare is a great place to start. So if you do want to try out that Photoshop class that I mentioned earlier, or any of the other classes that Skillshare has to offer, you can click link in the description down below. The first 1,000 people that join with my link will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, so that's everything on the platform for free until that trial expires, and then once it does expire, it's just under $10 a month annually, so it's pretty sweet. Thank you once again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. They've sponsored a few videos on my channel now, and they come through. Skillshare does not disappoint. And thank you to you guys for checking out Skillshare, as it really does help out the channel a lot. And so that is all I have to say for the ad. So let's jump into these characters. Oh, also, I feel like it's safe to say that I've definitely become a braiding master now. Like, look at what I came up with today. I feel like it's super cute. I feel like I'm kind of turning into Lupe from Go, where I'm just gonna come up with like different braids in my hair every video, but I'm okay with it. I'm living my best life. Okay, yeah, number 10, let's go.
You guys were really great.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, I told Brown you guys didn't take my bracelet.
Wow. Thank you.
See you next summer.
Sure.
Guess what? My mom said yes. I get to make the switch.
That's great. Welcome to the Ego Factory.
Thanks. Tess, how could you? Oh, I'm so sorry. I feel horrible, but... Who am I kidding? I am so excited. I can't even pretend to be sympathetic.
So at number 10, we have Tess from Camp Rock, and this one is a hard one for me because it's one that I can definitely see both sides. If you don't remember, in the first movie, Tess was like the mean girl of the camp, and she was just like a menace to be around. And then by the end of the movie, we kind of start to learn more about her character. We learned that her mom never had time for her, and so she was kind of lonely, and then she kind of took it out on the people around her. But then by the end of the movie, she comes around and apologizes, and it's just a good time. And then we move on to Camp Rock 2, where it starts off with Tess being the same as she was at the end of the first movie. She's like pretty chill and friends with everybody now, until Camp Star comes around, and then she's like, see you later, Camp Rock, and goes right back to her old ways. And so for me, it's like, on one hand, I'm like, okay, her character development did come quite quickly, and so it's like, can people really change that fast? Like, I'm not too sure. So it kind of makes sense that she goes back to her old ways so quickly. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that I'm not still disappointed by it. Like, Tess's character had so much potential by the end of the first movie, and it would have been really cool to see her put her words to action in the second movie and try to become a part of the team. And it just makes me so frustrated because the potential for a non-generic plotline was right there, but they didn't go for it. And then on top of all that, I feel like it also takes away her character development at the end of the second movie, if you can even call it that, because then it just kind of comes across as like, oh yeah, Tess is like that. She flip-flops back and forth. When a new opportunity comes, she'll probably go on that instead. And so it just makes me sad. But like I said, I can see both sides of this one, and so that's why I do have it at number 10.
Alex, it's all right. How's this for a romantic moment?
Oh my gosh, Mason.
Oh my gosh, Mason.
It glows?
Yes. Quite unusual, really. It It runs on batteries.
I love it.
They're kissing! Cheers, Alex. You look smashing tonight. Hey? Smashing? I remember how you used to love my cute British vernacular.
Listen, Mason.
Dodgy, quid, knickers. Bob's your uncle.
Wait, Mason, you have to stop.
Why can't you just open your heart to me?
Because I don't want a boyfriend right now.
Very well. Then you won't hear another pip-pip out of this mush. Nothing?
So I think that this one is definitely an unpopular opinion. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this before. Like, whenever I bring up Alex and Mason, I always try to like squeeze this opinion in there really nonchalantly because I don't want people to get mad at me. But now is my time. It is my time to shine. And so I just want you guys to hear me out before you get upset, okay? So I've always felt that near the end of season 4, something happens with Mason and I do not like it. He somehow becomes this person who is super needy and disrespectful towards Alex and her wishes, and I don't know where it came from. If you need a little refresher, this basically all starts, in my opinion, during mid-season 4 in the Beast Tamer episode. In this episode, Alex feels like Mason is being a bit distant and is hiding something from her, but she doesn't know what it is. And then in comes this Beast Tamer guy who kind of weasels his way in there, as Alex is already currently doubting her relationship with Mason. And then it turns out Mason was hiding something, but it was this really amazing gift for Alex, and then it's all cute and it's a good time and whatever, it ends. Happy ending. Until the next episode, which is the Wizard of the Year episode. So in this episode, this gossip channel makes it seem like Alex and the Beast Tamer are in a relationship. Mason sees this and gets mad about it, reasonably so, because he already was kind of threatened by Chase because of the last episode. But then he doesn't actually listen to Alex when she tries to explain that they blew the whole thing out of proportion and edited it to make it seem like they were dating when they're really not. But he doesn't listen to her and instead decides to take it out on her by not going to her Wizard of the Year ceremony. Until he decides last minute to go, and then he sees her with Chase and then werewolves up and attacks him and ruins the whole party and then forces Alex to choose between the two of them. And so then this is when Alex chooses neither of them and breaks up with Mason because she's amazing and we love her. And this brings us to the apartment episodes, where we get the whiny, I know no boundaries Mason. Basically, Alex and Harper move into this apartment and Mason happens to live on the same floor. And granted, this Mason only lasts for like 2 episodes, but it's his behavior in these 2 episodes that really tainted how I see his whole character. He just won't take no for an answer, keeps coming back and making Alex uncomfortable, and I just don't like it. He even goes as far as to try to spell Alex to open her heart to him, which, okay, I know people are gonna be like, Caitlin, isn't that just like Ben and Mal? And I'm like, yes and no. Like with Ben and Mal, Mal didn't even know Ben. She just spelled him to try to use him for her evil plot. Whereas with Alex and Mason, like Mason is supposed to love Alex, and if this is how he treats someone he loves, I just feel like that's a huge red flag for me. Obviously, a few episodes later, Mason does calm down, he's okay with being just friends, and then that's when Alex gives him a second chance. But those few episodes really changed my whole opinion on him, and so yeah, I just really didn't like that. And then I guess there was also the fact that he ate Dean, and so that was a thing too. But like overall, I feel like it was such a short period of time that I just had to have it a little bit farther back on this list.
If we hadn't have come here, I'd be on the plane right now, heading to some private school to become something that I really don't want to be.
You don't, do you?
I've spent this entire movie telling Layla to follow her heart and do what she loves. And she did. She's more courageous than I am.
That's not true. You're braver than anyone I know. So you're glad we came?
I couldn't be more glad. It's like I'm tied up, but at the same time, I've never felt more free. You were right. What's the hurry to grow up? I could be stuck in 1962 with you.
Hey, there's a big swell. I want to go surfing.
That sounds awesome, but I can't. The dance is this weekend, and we are totally behind schedule.
Oh, speaking of, I had the coolest idea. What if the dance was a 60s West Side Story theme party? You could do it at the beach, people could dress up in costumes, you could even project the movie on a big 1960s type theater deal.
That would be really cool.
Right?
But there's just no time. And as much as I love West Side Story, you and I are like the only people under 50 that have ever heard of it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Oh, the college fair later. You're going with me, right?
Right. Yeah, uh-huh.
Brady, this is important. It's college, it's our future. And there's this amazing oceanography program that I have to check out.
Yes, of course, I'll be there.
In actual shoes.
Sure.
So next up we have Mack from Teen Beach, and she was one of the first characters that came to mind for me because I've always felt that her character feels so different in Teen Beach 2 in comparison to the first movie. But then when I was looking for the before and after clips for this video, I got a bit nervous because I was looking for the after clips first, and then I was second guessing myself and was like, was she really that different in the first movie? And I wasn't too sure where those thoughts came from. And then I watched the clip that I ended up including for this video, and I was like, oh, so that's where those thoughts came from. She literally says at the end of the first movie that she wants to try to live more in the moment and focus on spending more time with Brady, and then Teen Beach 2 starts and she feels like a completely different person. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about your future or put importance on it, but there's a way to balance the two of them, and that really seemed like what she wanted to do at the end of the first movie, and so it was just so disappointing to see her make such a 180 in this movie. And then it makes me mad because the way that they resolved this issue is just by having their memories erased and having them meet again for the first time. Which first of all doesn't make any sense, because if Brady and Mack never met, then Mack wouldn't even be here, she'd be off at boarding school. And then second of all, Mack would not be able to have character development in this movie if she never met Brady. Like, he's the character who's supposed to give her character development. If they never met, then she would just be back to where she was at the beginning of this movie. I guess the argument is that now that the movie has changed, that's what's changed Mack, but it just makes me mad that she's apparently had all of this character development that we didn't even get to see, and just overall in Teen Beach 2, she felt like such a different character in comparison to Teen Beach 1, and so that's why she is on this list.
Oh, these. It's salty like nuts, but it's sweet, like I don't know what.
Let me see. Great grip. You play sports?
Here. Go on. Trust me on this. I know. Dig in, dig in.
Okay, so this is another one that I'm just begging you guys to hear me out first before you get mad at me. I personally don't think that Jay and Carlos were ruined. I think that's a very extreme title to give them, and I wouldn't go that far. That's why they are farther back on this list, but I do think that they weren't given much character to begin with. Like, for me personally, when I look at Descendants overall as a franchise, I see it as the Mal and Evie show featuring Jay and Carlos. I mean, actually, it's more like the Mal show featuring Evie with a little bit of Carlos, and then Jay is just off chilling somewhere in a corner. So to focus on Carlos first, because I feel like he was given a little bit more importance than Jay was, basically in the first movie, what was his story arc? He was afraid of dogs, and then he met a dog, saw that dog was nice, and then he was no longer afraid of dogs. How that storyline is comparable to any of the other story arcs in the first movie is beyond me. Even Chad wouldn't even acknowledge his existence when he was calling out all the other VKs. So let's move on to the second movie. In the second movie, Carlos got a love story. He got a love story with Jane, and that was very cute, but that was about it. In the third movie, I think we got even less of Carlos. I think there was some Jane and Carlos moments, and then there was that one scene where he pulled the thorn out of Ben's paw, and that's like all I can remember from the third movie. And so let's move on to Jay. So first of all, I know this is a pretty common critique, but why is Jay a thief? Jafar was not a thief, Aladdin was the one who was a thief. The only logical explanation to this is that Aladdin is also Jay's dad. Actually, I feel like I'd be here for that. Yeah, that's canon now in my brain. Anyways, let's talk about Descendants 1. What happened in Descendants 1? Jay was really into tourney, and so he kind of learns how to be a team player in the first movie. And I feel like the first movie was probably the most that we saw of Jay. Like, he got the best storyline in Descendants 1. Descendants 2... Descendants 2, there was that new sport. And the only thing I can remember Jay doing is making Lonnie the captain of the team, and that was good. I liked that. In Descendants 3, they gave him a boyfriend, which was probably the best thing they could have done, hands down. Actually, no, the best thing they could have done, hands down, is making the boyfriend actually canon in the Descendants universe and not just in my brain. So yeah, I don't know what it is about Jay, because now that I'm thinking about it, his storylines were pretty okay. But for some reason, I just always feel like he was overlooked in comparison to the other VKs. And I feel like this could partly be because of his wardrobe. I feel like they styled Jay very understated in comparison to everybody else. And I also feel like the merchandising is to blame. The amount of Mal and Evie merchandise that exists is like substantial in comparison to anything Carlos or Jay related. I feel like even when they're included on a picture of like the core four, Mal and Evie are always at the center and then Jay and Carlos are behind them. Like, I'm looking at my Descendants 3 poster right now and Jay literally looks like he's in the shadows. I understand that they were trying to market Descendants to young girls and so they had a heavier focus on Mal and Evie, but I just wish that Jay and Carlos got more love. That's really all it comes down to, and so that's why they are on this list.
¿Por qué le dijiste a Pedro que yo estaba saliendo con otro chico?
Para darle celos.
Yo no te pedí que hicieras nada.
¿Y qué pasó? ¿Pedro se enojó?
Más que eso.
Buenísimo, porque ahora sabes que él siente cosas por vos.
No, ahora no va a confiar más en mí. Y sabes que yo tampoco voy a confiar más en ustedes.
Exagerás, Delphi. Lo hice por tu bien. Si a vos te va mal con los chicos, no es mi culpa.
Ay, sí, Delphi, por favor, deja de echarle la culpa a Ámbar y empezá a pensar que vos cometerás tus propios errores.
No puedo creer que te pongas del lado de ella.
¿De qué lado? Si estoy en el medio de las dos.
seguro le dijiste a Pedro que yo estaba saliendo con otro chico porque el otro día te criticó, ¿no? No puedo creer lo egoísta que sos.
¿Vos en serio pensás que a mí me puede llegar a afectar algo de lo que diga ese chico? Que poco me conoces, Delfina.
Lo mismo digo. Así que no creo que podamos seguir siendo amigas.
Bueno.
Hablando de juegos. Chicos, por favor, miren qué lindo este chico que lo tenía al lado en el asiento cuando volvía de Los Ángeles. ¿No es divino? Oliverio se llama. Nombre raro, ¿no? Misterioso.
Sí, es como hippie chic, ¿no? Como un poco desalineado. Está bien, no es mi estilo, pero está bien.
¿Y qué haces sacándote selfies con compañeros de vuelo? ¿Pedro? ¿Qué pasó?
Ay, Pedro ya fue. Chicas, ¿no vieron mi perfil? Cuando conocí a Oliverio, primero cambié mi estado a es complicado. Y después a soltera. Me di cuenta que tenías razón. Pensé en mi estatus, en lo que me conviene.
Te diste cuenta tarde, pero bueno, me alegro que por fin estés usando tu cabeza.
Ah, Mack, yo también estoy usando mi cabeza. Chicas, me traje de New York unos sombreros divinos. Los estreno y después se los presto.
¿Al chico este del vuelo lo volviste a ver?
No, nos mandamos algunos mensajes, pero nada más.
¿Y cómo terminó todo con Pedro? No entiendo.
¿Lo dejaste por mensaje de texto?
Ay, no. Chicas, ¿cómo pueden pensar que soy así de insensible? No, le mandé un video. Y creo que se lo tomó bien porque fui muy delicada.
Pedro, lo nuestro se terminó. Sorry, sos súper divino, no lo tomes a mal, ¿sí?
Alright, so we have our first telenovela character of this list, and I feel like these characters are really easy to talk about in terms of how they were ruined, because Disney Channel Latin America likes to do this really fun thing that I love so much, where they're like, hey, remember that really good character development we did? What if we get this, undo it, and then do it all over again? And then that's exactly what happened with Delphi. If you don't watch Soy Luna, basically Amber is like the mean girl of the show, and so Delphi is one of her closest friends, and in season 1, Delphi starts catching feelings for Pedro, but Amber feels like he's like not of her status, and so she doesn't think that they should date, and so then this is what opens Delphi's eyes to how badly Amber treats people, and she decides to distance herself from her. And so this results in so many great Delphi scenes near the end of season 1. She ends up helping out Nina and Gaston, which results in me just wishing that we could have gotten a good, healthy Nina and Delphi relationship. Like, they could have been such good friends, but they weren't because they ruined it. And then, yeah, like I said, they end up doing the exact same character development over the course of season 2, which, like, yeah, on one hand, I can understand, you know, Delphi has distanced herself before from Amber, so she could do it again. But on the other hand, I'm like, we were already there. Why'd we have to go back and do it all over again? I guess on the bright side, her character development did stick throughout the course of season 3, but it just makes me sad to think about all the time and relationships that she missed out on just because Disney didn't know what else to do with her character. And I actually just got to season 2 on my Soy Luna rewatch, and so I had to watch them do this to her character all over again, and for some reason it made me more sad this time than it did the first time. I guess now it's kind of like I see the wasted potential even more so now that I know everything that happens. And so yeah, while they do redeem her character in the end, I'm still just so sad that this happened and all the wasted potential that it had, and so that's why I do have Delphi a little bit higher up on this list.
Actually, if you do the part with that particular song, I imagined it much slower.
If we do the part? Kelsey, my sawed-off Sondheim. I've been in 17 school productions. And how many times have your compositions been selected?
This would be the first.
Which tells us what?
That I need to write you more solos?
No, it tells us that you do not offer direction, suggestion, or commentary. And you should be thankful that me and Ryan are here to lift your music out of its current obscurity. Are we clear?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, Sharpay.
Nice talking to you.
Oh, and Sharpay, can you remember to invite as many people from my fan club as possible to opening night dress rehearsal? I want the theater filled with people who love me as much as you do.
Sure.
You know, it'd be great after all this work. A long, luxurious spa bath.
Oh, sounds amazing. Thank you.
Run one for me, will you? And then you can finish these. You're the best.
Okay, so just as a disclaimer, what I'm about to say, I'm saying with nothing but love in my heart, and that is the fact that I feel like Sharpay had the potential to be #1 on this list, but she's not, just for the sole fact that I feel like not enough people care about Sharpay's fabulous adventure to take it seriously. Do I think it's amazing that Sharpay got her own movie? Yes, of course, and I thoroughly enjoy it every time I sit down and watch it. But I also think that they took so many liberties with her character to try to make her seem more likable that she turned into this character that just isn't the Sharpay we know and love. The Sharpay I know would never put herself second to anyone else, let alone idolize someone, especially someone who doesn't deserve it. Like, Sharpay would see right through Amber Lee's game. I get that Sharpay was mainly just using Amber Lee so that boy could get the part, but it's also very clear that she did idolize her and was hurt whenever she would walk all over her. There's also the fact that she just becomes really ditzy in this movie. Like, I get that Sharpay was never like the brightest of the bunch, but she was able to conduct so many plans in High School Musical, and then I feel like in this movie they kind of treat her just like this dumb blonde. Overall, I can see why they made the changes that they did to her character in this movie, but it still doesn't change the fact that she was just so much more superior in High School Musical. I mean, there is also the fact that, like, they made her become good at the end of every movie just to have her go back to her old ways in the next movie, but I feel like that's honestly on point for Sharpay, and so I'm okay with it.
Come on, man. The Billy you know is your teammate. And that comes way before whatever these guys are to you.
These guys?
Why are you wrong? These guys are my friends. All the time. Not just on the field.
What's your name?
Lucas. And these are my... How would you like to be called?
A girlfriend.
And how would you like to be
The
called?
girlfriend, equally as much.
So at number 4, I've got Maya, Riley, and Lucas from Girl Meets World, and this happened because when I was making this list, right away I wrote down Riley, because I've always felt that she kind of became more of a caricature as the show went on. Like, she turned into someone who was super positive all the time and butterflies and rainbows sort of thing, but then also like super deep at other times, and it was just really weird overall and just didn't really feel like a very realistic person, if that makes sense. And Maya gets a bit confusing because I don't really think that Maya herself was ruined, but I do think that everyone else in the show ruined Maya's character. In the beginning of the show, Maya was a lot more reckless and carefree, and people were constantly telling her that she needed to be more responsible and do better in school. And so then as the show went on and Maya started to mature and start to become more responsible and do better in school, and then suddenly she had become Riley and everyone was mad about it and they wanted her to go back to the way that she was before. And then Maya's over here like, I'm still me, but no one's actually listening to her. And so then that brings us to the Josh Aya scene where Josh is basically like, you only liked Lucas so that you could protect Riley, and she's like, okay, let's go with that. And then everyone stops bugging her, so I guess it worked. And then lastly we have Lucas, who I feel like started out as an interesting character. You know, he was like the new guy, and so there was some mystery to him, and then we find out that he had this whole backstory with getting expelled in Texas. But then the love triangle happened, and I feel like that's when his character really went downhill, which is why I chose the love triangle clips for this video. Somehow during all of this triangle drama, Lucas lost all of his personality to the point where at one point he couldn't even speak for himself without using cue cards. Now, in Lucas's defense, I've never been in a love triangle, but I just don't understand how you could string both of these girls along without knowing which one you liked more. And then he comes out and says that he knew it was Riley all along and he just didn't want to hurt Maya, which I find hard to believe. Like, if that was the case, then why'd you grab her face, Huckleberry? Like, I'm calling your bluff. And so that brings me to the conclusion that basically the love triangle ruined everything, which is a conclusion that I think we've all already agreed on. They took this friendship, forced them into a love triangle, and then by the end of it, we're like, hey, I know we just spent like half of the show talking about this love triangle, but that's really not the important part. Friendship is. I'm just like, do you guys have any self-awareness at all to this mess that you've created or nah? And so yeah, that's basically Girl Meets World in a nutshell. I feel like the only characters that came out of this in terms of like the main friend group unscathed were probably like Farkle, Smackle, and Zay. But even like Farkle, I feel like there was that one episode where he was like really strangely rude to Riley and like forced her to say her feelings even though she wasn't ready. So that wasn't cool. But I guess like in his defense, he was like trying to help her. I don't know. Anyways, that's Girl Meets World. Let's move on.
Mateo, no te quiero perder.
Yo tampoco quiero perderte, Luna. Llegaste a mi vida como un huracán y revolucionaste todo. Eres Luna y brillas como el sol.
Cuando sigues tu corazón, se ilumina todo. ¿Lo ves? Cuando estamos juntos, siento como si nos envolviera la luz de 1000 estrellas. Te quiero muchísimo, Mateo. No hay distancia que cambie lo que siento por ti.
Te voy a extrañar, chica de mi vida.
Y yo a ti, chico fresa. ¡Ey! ¡Mateo! ¡Mateo, espera!
Hola, Luna.
Hola, chico fresa, ¿cómo estás? Me dijiste que quieres hablar. Me acerco y te vas. ¿Qué te está pasando?
No pasa nada. Igual estoy un poco apurado, así que nos vemos después.
No, espera. Mira, es un segundo, de verdad. Mira, de un día para otro dejaste de contestar mis mensajes. Y me dijiste que quieres hablar. Me acerco y me evitas. ¿Qué te está pasando?
Luna, entre nosotros ya no hay más nada. Lo nuestro se terminó.
So you may have noticed I put an asterisk beside Matteo's name, and that was done because I wanted to be clear that when I'm talking about this, I'm really only referring to season 2 Matteo, because just like with Delphi, he was redeemed in season 3, almost even more so because he is more of a main character, so he is more of a focal point on season 3, and he really came through. Season 3 Matteo is everything to me. But unfortunately, we're not talking about season 3 Matteo today, we're talking about season 2 Matteo, because they did him so dirty in season 2 that it just infuriates me to no end. So as you just saw through the before and after clips, basically at the end of season 1, Matteo goes off to Italy, unsure if he'll ever return, and so before he leaves, he confesses his love to Luna, they kiss, and it's a great time. Then we have the miniseries on YouTube which confirms that Luna and Matteo were in contact over the break and being very cute and very much in love, which Luna then confirms in episode 1 of season 2, which is right when things start going south. Basically, Matteo misses the first day of school, doesn't reply to anybody's texts, nobody knows what's up with him, and then when he does show up at the break, he avoids Luna to the point where she has to run after him just to get him to talk to her. And then when he does talk to her, he breaks up with her. And this is just the beginning of the downfall, because he then goes on to fake date Fernanda and basically just do anything he can to keep from telling Luna the truth, which is that his dad wants him to go to school for business, which he first of all doesn't want to do, he'd rather focus on his passions, but then he also doesn't want to put Luna through either a long distance relationship or just like having to break up with her because he's gonna be gone. Which, okay, it pains me to say this, but I can kind of see where Matteo is coming from. Like, he's at the point where the decision's already been made, so he doesn't want to tell Luna because he's worried that she'll talk him out of it. But on the other hand, I'm like, it is a dumb decision and he should be talked out of it. But also having good communication in relationships is like one of the most important things. And so yeah, what he did was not cool, especially when you take into account all of the gaslighting he did to Luna as well. And overall, it just seems so out of character in comparison to how he was in the last episode of season 1 with his promise to Simon that he wasn't going to do anything to hurt Luna. And then he comes back and does this, and it's like, who are you? Like, by doing this, he might think that he's saving Luna from being hurt in the long run, but there's no way that he's not also aware of the fact that he's currently hurting Luna in the present. But he does go on to redeem himself. In episode 40, he proclaims his love to her and apologizes and sings one of the best songs from the show, which, side note, is also when Matteo became my favorite ship of all time. And everything's great for a bit. They get together and it's cute and I love it and we're having a good time. And that is until things come crashing down once again. But this time I can kind of see both sides of the situation. Like, Luna is upset about the way Matteo's been acting, but Matteo's upset about his album, and it's kind of like, I don't know, I can kind of cut Matteo more slack in the second half of season 2, but it's really the first half of season 2 that I'm just like, who is this person? And so yeah, that's my Matteo rant. Like I said, I'm currently rewatching the show, and so I haven't gotten to the second half of season 2 yet, and so I don't know, maybe my opinions of that argument will change after I rewatch it, but only time will tell. For now, this is how I feel. I think that they ruined Matteo in season 2, and it makes me sad. And so let's move on to number 2.
Bueno, hace un tiempo quería contarles algo y no me animaba, pero llegó el momento. ¿Los amigos estamos para eso? Les quiero contar que estoy yendo a una psicóloga.
Qué bueno. Bien.
Qué bueno. ¿No van a decir nada más?
¿Pero eso es todo lo que nos tenías que decir?
No entiendo.
Yo pensaba que había más.
Bueno, es que sí, me sentía mal y hablé con mi mamá y ella me ayudó a buscar una psicóloga.
Qué bueno que pediste ayuda cuando lo necesitabas.
Sí, la verdad que estaba muy insegura y dudaba de mí todo el tiempo y eso me generaba tensión y dolor, así que estuvo bien ir.
Yo también fui a ver a una psicóloga cuando mi hermana sufrió el accidente y me ayudó muchísimo.
La verdad que quería contárselos hace mucho. Qué bueno que pude hacerlo.
¡Ah, wow! ¿Y ese look?
¿Te gusta?
Sí, sí, estás un poco diferente.
Sí me siento diferente, ¿sabes? Y todo esto es gracias a Trish.
¿Otra vez con ella?
Sí. ¿Cuál es el problema?
No hay ningún problema. Es que en los últimos días no paras de hablar de Trish y su podcast.
Sí, es que me está ayudando mucho a encontrar mi propia voz.
¿Y por qué? ¿Te quedaste afónica?
No me quedé afónica, Kiara. Sino que Trish, en Power to You, dice que cada una tiene que encontrar su propia voz. ¿Y eso qué significa? Que hay que lanzarse, liberarse. Y eso es lo que quiero hacer yo ahora.
Ok, pero igual yo no entiendo por qué en vez de escuchar consejos de una persona que ni te conoce, no vuelves a la psicóloga. Ella te ayuda un montón, ¿no?
Sí, me ayudó mucho. Me ayudó a entender cosas y me sirvió en un momento. Pero creo que ahora es una nueva etapa y necesito algo diferente. Sí, creo que es el momento de Celeste en acción.
So now we've made it to the character that started it all. It was Celeste that made me want to create this video in the first place because what they did to her character just breaks my heart. And I'm sure you got the gist of this just based on the clips, even if you haven't seen Bia, but basically in season 1, Celeste is seeing a therapist, but she's unsure about telling her friends about it because she's worried about what they might think, to the point where she creates this lie that she's like wanting to get a nose job so that they won't know where she's going. And I honestly found the whole plotline to be so groundbreaking. Like, we actually got numerous scenes with Celeste in therapy, and it was honestly just amazing to see. I feel like the closest another Disney Channel show has gotten to this point would be Mack, but I still feel like Bia took it one step further. And then you have this scene that I decided to include for this video where she tells her friends and they're just like, that's great, which just made me so incredibly happy. I just loved this whole story arc so much, and it's what made Celeste become my favorite character. And then season 2 happened, in which we see Celeste choose to listen to a podcast instead of going to therapy, which made me concerned, but I hoped that by the end of the season she would realize that those things are not interchangeable, but then that did not happen. Instead, she meets Trish, who is the host of the podcast, learns that she is even more insecure than Celeste is and not at all how she acts in her podcast, and that's basically it. Like, the plotline basically gets forgotten about, and I am putting this out before the special comes out, so maybe something will get resolved then, but like where it sits right now, I am not impressed. I was very disappointed in the direction that they took her character, and honestly their only redemption for me is if they make Trish her girlfriend. No, but honestly I do ship it, but also maybe she should go back to therapy if she needs to. I'm also thinking that maybe they were setting this up for a plotline in season 3, but now that we're probably not getting one, it just makes me more sad, and so let's move on to number 1. Actually no, wait, honorable mentions first and then number 1. Okay, so I have 5 characters that I wanted to give honorable mentions to because they're characters that, like, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they were ruined, but there was something about them that they did that just missed the mark for me. And so first off, I have Eugene from Tangled the series, and this one is hard for me because it's one that I can't really pinpoint what it is that I was disappointed by, but for me when I look at Tangled the movie, Flynn Rider is one of my favorite characters in that movie. I love him so much. And then I look at Eugene and Tangled the series, and there's just something about him that's missing for me. Like, when I was watching the show, I just felt like there was a certain magical touch that Eugene didn't have, and so I was disappointed by that. And I was also a little bit nervous to bring it up in this video because I feel like the Tangled the series fan base is very passionate, and I didn't want them coming for me for bringing this up, and so I don't know, I'm just curious to know if anyone else felt the same way while watching the show or if I'm crazy. I don't know. Let's move on to my next honorable mention. And then we have Gaston from Soy Luna. This one is pretty obvious. One minute he's telling Nina that they can make things work, and the next minute he's breaking up with her. What's up with that? Next up we've got Ben from Descendants, and this is just because I find it very hard to believe that the Ben in the first movie that so deeply wanted these villain kids to be given a chance would completely forget about this in the third movie. I mean, maybe he just got distracted by like his kingly duties, but I don't know. I find that hard to believe. Next up we've got Marco from Star, and I love Marco with all my heart. I would never go as far as to say that his character was ruined, but I do think that his character was underdeveloped, especially considering the fact that he went and lived to be 30 and then he came back and had to live his whole life again. Like, how did that not do anything to his brain? Like, what happened to Marco? I want to know, is he okay? And then the last one just breaks my heart to say because I love her so much, but Nina in season 1 is just so far superior to Nina in the rest of the show. And I don't even know how to explain it. All I know is that I feel like Nina went through so much in season 1, with falling in love with Gaston, to her Felicity for Now plotline, to learning how to skate for the first time, just for it to feel like she doesn't really do as much in the next 2 seasons, which makes me really sad. And so, I don't know, like I said, I am currently rewatching the show, so maybe I'll change my opinion on it once I see it again, but for now, that is how I feel. And so with all that being said, let's move on to my number 1 character.
What is going on? How come you never told me you had dyslexia?
I was too embarrassed.
I'm your best friend. I know every embarrassing thing about you. And there's a lot. I know you sometimes sleep with your baby blanket. I know you still can't get on some of the big kid rides at the park. Cece, this isn't something you need to be embarrassed about. How do you know? I see letters, and sometimes it just looks like alphabet soup. I wake up every day terrified that I might have to read something out loud. I never knew that. Because I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know. Why does it even matter? Because people can be mean. Especially if they find out that you have some kind of weird disorder. It's not a weird disorder. Millions of people have it. Yeah, but Rocky, sometimes it affects my dancing. Left and right, they just get jumbled up in my head and I can't do anything about it. And then I think, who am I kidding? I'm never going to be as good as any of the other dancers.
Okay, all right, so the house isn't in the middle of Paris, but according to this map, it's like a 1/4 centimeter away. Yeah, that's super close.
Cece, this, on this map, is 500 miles.
It is? Well, they should really have something on there that tells you that. They do. It's called a scale. Cece, did you really think that all of France was this big? This is like Major Dance Boot Camp Part 2.
Are you really surprised, Rocky? Everything was Cece's part, duh.
Seriously, Cece, you have messed up our trip to Paris.
Wait. Cece arranged the house swap and nobody checked her work?
You're the smart one.
You're her mom.
Guys, we're losing focus. We're all mad at Cece, remember? This place better have indoor plumbing.
This isn't my fault. The email said they were in a province near Paris. No, Cece, it says they're in Provence, a perfect getaway from Paris. Well, you know I don't speak French. It's in English.
So I was about to say that I watched Shake It Up quite recently, but it was actually at the start of quarantine, which was like almost a year ago now. But I still feel like it is very fresh in my mind, and the way that they handled Cece's character literally makes me want to cry. And I mean, I feel like the clips really speak for themselves. In the first season, Cece was great. Like, she wasn't as smart as Rocky, but nobody was, because Rocky was like the top of their class. But she also like wasn't dumb. She was just normal. And then as the show went on, I feel like that slowly started to change, and Cece became really ditzy and just your stereotypically dumb TV persona. And if that wasn't frustrating enough, it just makes everything even worse when you think back to the dyslexia episode. Now, you could argue that that episode was only done because Bella Thorne had dyslexia, and so they thought it would be cool to incorporate it into the show. It makes me sad that they used this as kind of a one-off thing that they never came back to again, but if that's all they wanted to do, that's fine, except for the fact that now you have this character who I think is the only confirmed character from Disney Channel who has dyslexia, and you're gonna turn her into the dumb comic relief character? Like, where's the logic behind that? There was just so many times where I was watching the show where Cece's like dumb moments just got to be so frustrating to watch, and I just couldn't handle it. I mean, obviously there were times where Cece's good parts did come through, but overall I was just so disappointed to see how they handled her character, and so that is why I have her at number 1. But I want to know what you guys think. If you agree with me on these characters, or if there's other characters you feel like Disney Channel ruins, let me know in the comments down below. I can't wait to read all about it. Anyways, Cater Tots, that is all I have to say for today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. So I just recorded like half of this video with my mic off, and so this will probably be at the end after my outro, but I just wanted to say that, like, no matter what happens in life, like, just know just always remember to double check that your mic is on. That is all.